And welcome everyone to Coffee with Creatives. My name is Kerry Schwabel. I'll be your host for the day. A bit about myself. I'm a board member on the AF Toledo Ad Club. I serve on the programs and communications committees. Currently work at Coopersmith Advertising as a digital media operations specialist. And I also bring 7 years of sports broadcasting and media experience with me as well, which leads into our topic for the day, which is sports marketing and social media strategy. Before we get to our topic and introducing our guest, Sue Bruning will be announcing our 2 lucky participants of today's session who will be receiving a gift card. Sue?
Thanks, Carrie. So for each of our Coffee with Creative sessions, Cascade Environmental, who happens to employ me, is proud to sponsor 2 gift cards to the Nutrition Spot. And you can double up your Advantage card, AAF Advantage card, for some more savings. And the winners for today are Bethany Waddell and Tim McCarthy. So congratulations, Bethany and Tim. I will reach out to you via email to get that card in your hands.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. A reminder for those of you who may be new to Coffee with Creatives, we keep things very informal and it's intended to be an organic discussion. So any questions, by all means, let them fly. That's just one baseball pun I'll try and throw in there today. If you have any others, extra points will be given. So with the Toledo Mud Hens starting the season last week, it's an exciting time. We're starting to see some normalcy back in the world of sports. Now with all the changes that have happened, we'll see some changes with social media and strategy behind those. And to discuss those is our special guest, Amanda Jerzakowski. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Amanda.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Toledo. Went to Central Catholic for high school, and then went to University of Michigan. Graduated there in 2015 with a degree in psychology and communications. And then when I moved back to Toledo following graduation, I actually started with the Mud Hens organization in the Swamp Shop, which is our merchandise store. Did that for a few months and then started a position in the communications department as a kind of digital communications, social kind of intern, helping with social, website, press releases. And then in April 2016, I started full-time as their social media coordinator. So before me, there was really no one who was dedicated to solely social media. And with how big social is nowadays, they really needed someone whose kind of sole focus was that. So yeah, I've been there for full-time a little over 5 years now, and I love it.
That's awesome. Okay, so first let's get into it. How was the first week of the season for the Mud Hens?
Yeah, the first week was an absolute whirlwind, but in the best way possible. I mean, it was just so great to finally be back in the ballpark. And not only be back, but to welcome fans back too. I mean, before May 4th, it had been over 600 days since we had last had a baseball game. Not that we were counting or anything, but our last home game was September 2nd, 2019. So it had been a year and a half since we had, baseball at Fifth Third Field. 2020 obviously was such, a difficult year for everyone, but we weren't, foreign to that. It seemed like it was one blow after another. March 2020, the walleye season was postponed and then canceled. Mud Hen season 2020 was postponed and then canceled. Walleye season 2021 was postponed and then canceled. And then even this year, the Mud Hen season was postponed a month. So it felt like a long time coming, and it was nice to kind of see all of the hard work that our front office has done in the last year finally pay off. It was definitely odd to see the limited capacity because we're so used to opening day being like a holiday, in Toledo. People take off work and they pack the streets, and the restaurants are packed. So it was definitely different to see that limited number of people that were allowed to come. But it's just something that we had to work through. And at the end of the day, it was just so great to be able to see our fans again in person. I think everyone's been kind of clamoring for a win, in this last year. And finally, it felt like we, are getting back to some form of normalcy.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, definitely a win. And you talked about some of those changes. Can you talk about some of the changes around the ballpark that have been due to COVID?
Yeah,
Some of the-
absolutely. Yeah. So currently we're selling tickets in what we call pod seating. And so you can buy tickets for up to 6 people in your group. And we place you in the ballpark, and then we block off the seats around you 6 feet in any direction. So you'll be kind of separated from everyone else. There's also a bunch of new signage around the ballpark. So when you walk in, there's signage talking about social distancing and, wearing your mask and, all those COVID protocols that are pretty much second nature to us now, having been in it for a year. So the ballpark does look a little different. We have these new spaces that we're promoting that we call reserve your table. And so if you've been to the ballpark, you might notice that on the main concourse, we have these new areas called patio suites, where we've blocked off areas of the concourse, and you can purchase tickets with your group, and you get a table, you get seats, and it's kind of like a nice separate area away from everyone, but it's still right in the middle of the action. It still has great views. So we're just kind of working through, those changes. It definitely looks different, but at the end of the day, it still has that same feel of, Mud Hens baseball, which is, the most important thing.
Right. That's great. Well, let's get into the sports marketing topic and share my screen if I can. Normally your seasons are, the marketing and social media is all centered around promotions, correct?
Yeah.
So with this year, not knowing if fans are going to be in, limited fans, you guys have kind of pulled back the reins on those. Can you talk a little bit about just what that process is like? And I'm showing some of the promotions that you have right now. One of them's on your website, I believe, and the other one's a social post on Twitter, I think.
Yeah.
Just talk about that the strategy behind that. And the
Yeah,
thought
absolutely. I think it's twofold. One is minor leagues, we don't necessarily promote player specific content because, our players are, there's so much turnover with our team year to year that we don't have the, the LeBron James and the Tom Brady's to promote. And so we always kind of have steered away from promoting player specific content. Granted, we do more of that on the Walleye side, just because there is a little bit more stability with our team. Fans seem to, be more in tune with the team. There's more interaction between the team and the fans on the Walleye side. On the Mud Hens side, not so much. We've found that, the vast majority of our Mud Hens fans actually aren't diehard baseball fans. They come to a game because, they have a family and they have kids and they want like a fun outing, or they're young people who are, looking for something fun to do on a weekend. Very few of them actually come to a game to watch baseball. And so that's why in the minor leagues, promotions and theme nights and giveaways are so important. It's to bring those people out. It's the Harry Potter nights and the Game of Thrones nights and the, Hen and Hound where you can bring your dog. That's really how we bring people into the ballpark. And this year with, our very limited staff, we're down to, a third of what we used to have. The marketing department used to be upwards of 15 people, and now there's 3 of us. Same with, every other department is experiencing that. So not having those promotions to kind of bring people out, we've been trying to figure out what are some ways to convince people that, hey, you need to come to a Mud Hens game. And I think something that we've been trying this year, and as you screen shared, we just saw it, promoting the scarcity of tickets, because right now we are approved for 30% capacity. Now, granted, with the announcement last night, it looks like that's all going to be changing, which is great. But for opening week, we were approved for, we say 30% capacity, but that could really go anywhere from about 2,800 to 4,000 fans, depending on how people buy tickets and how we have social distancing in place. So that's been one of our biggest marketing strategies leading up to opening week. And then also this homestand that we have next week is, we have less than so-and-so tickets available for every game, or, hey, we've just released, this many tickets in this area. So I think just kind of promoting that if you want to come to a Mud Hens game, especially in the next couple weeks, you really need to get your tickets soon. So that's something that we've seen is kind of steering away from the promotions, which we obviously love so much, putting on those Star Wars nights and the bring your dog to the ballpark. But, that's something that we can't necessarily, rely on this year.
Amanda, I have a question for you. So you talked about right now, the goal is to convince people to come back into the park. What was the goal when the seasons were canceled or postponed? Are you still trying to connect with your audience to keep baseball and hockey top of mind, or do you just take a break and walk away from it altogether?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And that's something that, obviously when COVID hit and kind of everything shut down and, our seasons were canceled, there was no playbook for that. We were just kind of, figuring it out as we went too. So I think the biggest thing, especially on social media, was, staying top of mind with fans. It was difficult because we didn't have any new content to share for a year. We didn't have new highlight videos. We didn't have player announcements. We didn't have, promotions to, talk about on social with, hey, this weekend, bring your dog to the Walleye game. We didn't have any of that. So it was trying to find a way to keep our fans engaged when we were so stagnant. So it was, I think engagement was the key for us is, whether it's posting on social, asking fans, what's your favorite memory of a Mud Hens or Walleye game? Share your favorite photos or, share your favorite selfie with, one of our mascots, or what are you most looking forward to when we get back? Kind of those things that, will kind of remind fans that, hey, we're still here and, we will be back. It's just, it's a difficult time for all of us. And then also social kind of pivoted during COVID because before, we would have, paid advertising and we would have, mail that we'd send out to fans promoting the season. But then obviously when everything shut down and we didn't really have a budget, kind of organic social was relied on so heavily. So it was trying to figure out, how can we use social media to communicate, to most of our fans. It's for the most part, organic social media, it's free. It's where people get their news now. It's also like a tricky balancing act between recognizing that, during COVID, social media was and is, such a big kind of messaging tool for us, but then also realizing that social can't solve everything. You kind of have to pick and choose what you do post, because the minute that you post something that fans don't resonate with, they could just tune you out. So it's a tricky balancing act between realizing how important social media is right now, but then also, not kind of overdoing it.
Right.
Yeah, and sorry, I was a little bit late. Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the posts you were talking about, Amanda.
Yep.
Was for the Walleye, and it seemed to get some pretty good comments and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really like one thing that, you know, we've never really tried it before because we didn't necessarily have to. You know, we had, you know, the highlight videos and we had the, you know, promoting of the games that weekend for both teams. So it was, you know, I remember when, you know, work from home first started and COVID kind of really hit, you know, last March, last April, those of us in the marketing department kind of sat down and we were like, how can we still communicate with our fans and stay top of mind? We did a virtual opening day last year. So when we would have had opening day in 2020, we replayed one of our Governor's Cup championship games live on Facebook and, you know, had fans submit, you know, all those like dance cams that we do in game. We had fans do that from home and submit it to us. We invited kids to design their own Mud Hens jersey and share it with us on social. Our design team created a kids activity book where we were like, hey, you know, your kids, you know, everyone's home right now, you know, they're not in school, they're, you know, learning from home. What's something fun that kids can get involved in? So I think it was just really trying to, you know, come up with these ideas and just throwing them out there and seeing what works. That's such a big part of social too, is you never really know what's going to stick and what won't stick. You know, sometimes, you know, you'll post something that you think will be a hit and it's kind of a dud. And then other times you throw something out there that you're like, oh, we'll see how this goes. And, you know, it goes somewhat viral. So it's kind of hard to predict sometimes, and especially during COVID.
Okay, well, take us behind. So as an audience, we only see that final post.
Mhm.
Take us behind the scenes on how, you know, from the inception of the idea to you hitting post on social media.
Yeah.
How does that all transpire?
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
like a war room.
I wish. It's just me at my desk. No, so right now, we have, like I said, we have three people in our marketing department. So there's myself, our creative director, and our communications director. So it's mostly, you know, I would say a vast majority of what is posted on our social media pages is coming from me, besides our in-game kind of live tweeting, which is done by 3 of our PR interns. So for me, it's mostly just, I actually have a calendar that I use online to kind of set up, you know, what kind of that week is going to look like on social media, making sure to talk to all the different departments, you know, talk to our ticketing department, talk to our, you know, merchandise department and see, you know, what messaging they really want to get out that week. And then kind of slotting it into a calendar and then, you know, just sitting down and scheduling out our posts. One of my favorite kind of features that I'm able to use is this platform called Sprout, which lets us kind of upload all of our accounts into one, I guess, platform, because we have over 20 different social media accounts that we're running at once between the Mud Hens and the Walleye. And then we have Hensville, and then our 2 restaurants and the Swamp Shop. So it's just a lot to kind of, you know, keep up with. And so Sprout kind of gives me my own peace of mind too, and makes me not go as crazy so much, so I can see kind of what we have going out. So it's just a matter of kind of sitting down and, you know, scheduling those posts and finding the, you know, the perfect photo or video to go along with it. And then also, you know, it doesn't just stop there. It, you know, it goes beyond that, and seeing how those posts do, you know, reacting to fan questions or comments that they might have, and kind of thinking about, okay, this didn't do so well, so why not? Or, you know, this did really well, so how can we, you know, keep doing something like that?
What
So it's just a lot. It's, you know, it's fun, but it's definitely, there's a lot that goes into it rather than just, you know, tweeting.
what social platforms are you active on?
So we have, for the Mud Hens and Walleye, we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We do have a Snapchat account for both teams, but we just don't use that as much anymore. We found that Instagram stories are kind of, you know, the place to be. We have a TikTok account for the Walleye. My goal in the next few weeks is to get one going for the Mud Hens account. And then we have LinkedIn, we have YouTube, for both teams. And then plus with Hensville and our 2 restaurants, we have, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for all those.
Wow.
So it's definitely fun to manage all of them, but it can be, it's definitely a balancing act trying to figure out, time commitment and all that.
Right. And just planning a week ahead, like, are you afraid to leave your desk? Like,
Honestly, sometimes it's social media, it's not just like a 9 to 5 thing.
Yeah.
A lot of what social media is, it's after, 5 p.m. because that's when vast majority of people are, scrolling through Twitter is in the evening, before going to bed. So honestly, that's when we've tried to be active as well, is, not just posting between 9 and 5 when, people are more than
Right.
likely working. So it's definitely, it's not just, I leave work and, you turn it off.
Do you know how many fans, followers you have on social?
Yeah, so Walleye, we're around, I want to say like 80,000 on Facebook, and then upwards of maybe like 50,000 on Twitter. Mud Hens, we have a little bit more just because we've been around for a little bit longer than the Walleye have. Mud Hens, it's over 100,000 on Facebook, and Twitter, I actually just looked, it's like just shy of 75,000.
Wow.
So it's exciting too to see those numbers grow, like seeing where we were, even just this time 2 years ago to now. So it's kind of exciting to see that grow and to, figure out new ways to keep that number trending in the right direction.
Good. So what you're talking about, how many followers you guys have, and is there any interaction with the players on social media, or do you just try and stem away from that as well with the creative talks?
So it's actually a little bit different between both teams. So I'll kind of talk about, how we kind of approach that on the Mud Hen side and then how we approach it on the Walleye side. I think I touched on this earlier, but Mud Hens fans, for the most part, they're not the diehard baseball fans. They're here because they want to have something fun to do. And, there just happens to be a baseball game going on too. They're there to socialize and have fun with friends. And so we've tended to kind of stay away from player specific promotions, also because there's so much turnover with our team. A player who could be here today could get called up to Detroit tomorrow. And we don't really have those players besides, Mike Hessman, who really stays year after year after year. So we've tended to kind of stay away from that player specific content and focused more on the promotions, atmosphere aspect of that on the Mud Hen side. Now on the Walleye side, we have seen more of a, connection between the fans and the players. There's more, interaction between them. We host more, kind of meet and greet, autograph signings between the players. And we also use them more on social media. So before every season, we always host what we call a media day. And it's when a handful of us go down to the arena, meet the new players, and we get, their headshots and kind of anything that we'll need for, marketing purposes. But we also get, fun videos from them that we can use on Twitter during the game or, on the video board. And it's just, there's something too that we've found with like kind of humanizing the players, because yes, they're hockey players and you see them on the ice or you see them, on the baseball field with the Mud Hens, but we also do want to showcase their personalities. And on the Walleye side, we've really seen, success with that, because there are a handful of players that we've had that have been with us, since I've been with the organization for 5-6 years now. So there is that connection. So we do use them in, marketing materials. I remember we did a Star Wars night a few years ago, and we had one of our players, we bought a Chewbacca onesie off Amazon, and we had him dress up in a Chewbacca onesie and skate around the ice and promote Star Wars night. So just kind of goofy stuff like that. Actually, one of my favorite stories in regards to this, I'll keep it short, but a few years ago, we had a goalie named Jake Patterson. And on media day, we asked him to, show off his best dance move that we could then record and use it, as a GIF on Twitter. and he didn't really have a dance move. He didn't really know what to do, but that was back when like dabbing was like a really big thing. And so he like dabbed for us on camera, and we ended up sharing that on Twitter. We shared it on the video board during games that season, and fans absolutely loved it. Like they thought it was the funniest thing ever. And one of his teammates actually called him, his nickname was Patty. He actually ended up calling him Dabbing Patty. And so we started using that hashtag Dabbing Patty on Twitter, and fans just absolutely loved it. Like whenever we talked about him, we would use that hashtag, and they'd meet him at, you know, post-game meet and greets or autograph signings, and they'd call him that. They'd take pictures of him or with him dabbing. He'd come out on the ice if he was, you know, a star of the game, and he'd dab on the ice. So it was just something that was kind of just started as really nothing, you know, just we threw it out there and it became big. And then the following year when he signed with another team, they must have seen that that was his nickname, and they started calling him that too. So it's something that kind of followed him. But it's just something like that, you know, seems, you know, kind of minor for us, but for the fans to have like that connection and to talk to him and be able to, you know, feel like they're a part of it. That was just, you know, it was so cool for us to see.
Would you say Jake Patterson is one of your favorite players all time?
He's definitely up there. Yeah. I mean, we've had some really good players come through that are always willing to, you know, help us with different content, and, you know, on both sides, we've seen it. It's really fun to see, you know, them get behind it too. And, you know, they get excited about, you know, hey, when is that, you know, the Chewbacca video I talked about, you know, them asking, hey, when is that being shown on social media, or when is that being, you know, promoted on the video board? So it's just exciting to see them get excited about it too, because when they're excited and you can tell they're into it, our fans are into it as well. And I think our fans like, you know, feeling like they're a part of it, you know.
That's great. So going back to baseball, one of the big promotions that the Mud Hens have had, or at least one of the biggest players that's come through Toledo, was Justin Verlander. And I know you told me before, this might have been before your time, but the promotion for that night was, I think, Jurassic Park night.
Yeah, it kind of ended up being like the perfect storm, kind of like the weirdest thing ever. Like I feel like that night was kind of like the pinnacle of minor league sports. It was before I started there, so I'm just speaking from, you know, what I've heard from, you know, my coworkers who were there at the time. But this was in the summer of 2015. And we were set to host Jurassic Park night, and it was going to be one of our biggest theme nights of the year. We had specialty jerseys, we had you know, different activations on the video board, but then we also had this huge like blow up T-Rex that was going to deliver the game ball to whoever was pitching that night. And who was pitching that night happened to be Justin Verlander, who was here on rehab. And I think to this day, it might still be the most successful night for the Mud Hens. If not, it's in like the top 3. But I remember hearing about it because I was still up in college at the time, and I remember seeing videos of it. And we have video of Verlander on the mound, and this dinosaur comes out and like drops the game ball in his hand. And, you know, JV is just laughing and thinks it's like the funniest thing ever. I believe we still have his jersey to this day, the one that he wore. But it was cool for fans because, one, Jurassic Park, you know, the actual theme was awesome. So for fans going to that game, it was great to see. But then to also add in the fact that, you know, one of the greatest pitchers at the time was doing a rehab assignment, it was kind of perfect.
So a little bit of backstory to that. I was actually working camera that game. And I was doing camera 2, which is the one behind home plate. So I was the one shooting the dinosaur, handing the ball off to him. So that's why I brought it up. It's just such a vivid memory. And I was kind of like, what was it planned? Did you guys know Justin was going to be there, or was it just like, it was going to be Jurassic night and it just happened like that?
Oh, it was going to be Jurassic Park night regardless. The way we plan out our promotions is we plan it out months before the season even starts. So whatever date that was in the summer, that had been decided as Jurassic Park night, months in advance. So it was going to happen with or without Justin Verlander. And it just so happened that he was here on rehab that night. And I do remember one of my coworkers telling me that they had actually reached out to Verlander when we found out it was going to be him, just to make sure he would be okay with being a part of this kind of ridiculous, game ball delivery. And he absolutely loved the idea. He got behind it. He thought it was absolutely hilarious. I think his post-game interviews are still on our YouTube account. And he absolutely loved it. He thought it was great because obviously you don't have that same kind of, feel in the major leagues. There's not dinosaurs delivering game balls, up in Detroit. So I think it was just kind of a different experience for him. And then just for the fans in attendance, I can't even imagine, what they were feeling.
Yeah, it was definitely a night to remember.
Yeah.
So sticking with the baseball talk, there's a distinct baseball experience with Americans. How do you use that to leverage? How do you use that experience to leverage that interaction with fans on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, baseball is, America's pastime for a reason. So I think it's leveraging that in the fact that recognizing that there are a small amount of our fans who are diehard baseball fans and who know, probably more about the team than any of us in the front office do, and they've been with us, and the Ned Skeldon years when we used to play there. So I think it's communicating to them and updating, our followers on social media about, former players, but then it's also recognizing that our fans and our social followers are people of all different ages and levels of baseball interest and knowledge. So somehow we need to kind of cater to all of them. We need to cater to, the diehard baseball fan that knows everything there is to know about our team. But we also need to cater to, that fan who knows nothing about baseball and is just coming to Fifth Third Field because it's a nice evening and they want a beer and a hot dog with friends. So I think it's a balancing act between the two. We have a saying at work, and it's actually posted up in our Mud Hens press box, that every game is someone's first game. So there's someone in that ballpark or there's someone in that arena. It's their first Mud Hens game. It's their first Walleye game ever. So it's just recognizing that and making sure that all of your interactions with every single fan, benefits them in the way that they go home that night and they're like, wow, this was such a cool experience. I want to come back. And we kind of take that same approach on social media too. When fans tag us in tweets like, hey, we're at the Mud Hens game, or, they send us a message and they're like, hey, we had so much fun tonight. It's just kind of having that interaction with them and replying to them or, responding to them in some way that for us, it seems like it's, something so minor. It doesn't take more than a few seconds, but to them, it really means it's something important. So I think at the end of the day, yeah, we're a sports team and our goal is to sell tickets, but our goal is also to, provide our fans with an amazing experience and get them to come back and, have us be top of mind for, their future kind of activities. And that emotional connection is so important too. The morning of opening day, we shared this really cool video that we had put together. And it was just, like a, hey, welcome back, let's play ball finally for the first time in, over 600 days. So I think it's leveraging all of those kind of emotions, especially now.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions around social media?
I do, if I may.
Go ahead.
I actually have a question about Sprout and how it helps you to manage the social media platforms. I'm going to be managing several multimedia platforms here within the next few weeks. And I was curious what advantages that it has, say, compared to other services like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've used Sprout now for probably about 4 years. So shortly after I started, and we realized that we really needed some sort of social media management tool to kind of help us manage everything. With having over 20 accounts, it was getting to be, pretty difficult trying to see, what we had scheduled to go out, making sure we didn't have, similar messaging going out at the same time. So what Sprout does is you kind of hook into all of your different social media accounts, and you're able to schedule ahead of time, and you're able to see in a calendar view, if we have 7 walleye posts scheduled for the week and 8 mud hens posts, you're able to see those in a calendar view and kind of plan out like, okay, Tuesday at 2 p.m. I have this going out, so let's stagger another post later in the day. Or it's easy to see them all kind of in one place without going from between Facebook to back to Twitter. And it's just easy to visualize. And also what I love about Sprout is the analytics are great. You can choose, if you want to see the, your walleye Facebook analytics for the last year, you're able to create these really nice looking reports, and you're able to see, followers, impressions, engagement, all of that. So I have nothing but good things to say about Sprout. Like I said, we've used it for 4-ish years, and it mostly just keeps me sane too. So I don't go crazy and, wondering like, oh, when is this going out? Or, oh, should I, move this around? It's just easy to kind of see it all in one place.
Plus, you create one post and send it out on multiple social platforms?
Yeah, so there's literally like a drop down when you create a post, and you can select, I want this to go from Walleye Instagram and Walleye Twitter, or, Mud Hens Facebook. So you can choose, multiple accounts at once. And you're also able, what we do a lot of on social media is sponsor related content. We have, weekly, our Tire Man Player of the Week. So we have fans vote on Twitter for who they think the player of the week was, and that's sponsored by Tire Man. Well, when we schedule these posts out through Sprout, we're actually able to tag those as Tire Man. And so at the end of the season, when Tire Man comes to us and they were like, hey, what were the impressions for these posts this season? We want to see a proof of performance. We're able to pull all of those posts that we had tagged, and within 2 minutes, we have this nice report that we can send to Tire Man. Whereas before, it was literally just me like working in an Excel spreadsheet, like trying to copy and paste these numbers and adding them up and doing the average. But Sprout does all that for us. So we've seen a benefit in that too with the sponsor related activations.
Does Sprout only have social media channels on there, or can you tie an email as well?
I believe it's only social media, but I've never tried email. But I believe it's only social.
Okay.
Amanda, I have a question. You're welcome to plead the fifth if you want. I've made some pretty serious faux pas on social, but I only have 6,000 followers, so it's not so bad. Like, can you share with us like one of your biggest like slap on the forehead moments where you just want to crawl back into bed that day?
That's a good question. I think I can't think of like one in particular moment, but there have definitely been times where I've like, spelled something wrong, or, I remember I used to do like in-game social media for like the walleye and the hens. And I remember at one time I, posted a wrong, stat line or a wrong player. So I think it's just, I can't think of one in particular moment, but I do remember there has been like spelling or kind of grammar errors, or, posting a link that doesn't work. So it's usually, my coworkers or someone will, because I don't always catch it.
Right.
So, I'll get like a screenshot of a post, and my heart always drops when I see that someone sends me a screenshot of something I posted, because I'm like, oh gosh, what did I do wrong? What's spelled wrong? Does the link not work? So it's always like a slight moment of like, what did I do? And the fact that Twitter doesn't have an edit button is just,
Yes.
it needs to have an edit button. The amount of times I've had to delete tweets and then repost them, like, this could just be solved if I could just edit it.
Amanda, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you might have noticed that there are some people that are on, if you're talking about 80,000, 100,000 people, some of those people like to provide feedback to organizations and individuals. How do you deal with criticism that goes public? And there's justified criticism, right? And then there's just the critics and the haters. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our things that we like to say is, hey, the person who runs the Twitter account, isn't responsible for roster decisions, and we're not actually out there on the ice, or out there on the field. And we've seen that a little bit this year with the Mud Hens, actually, kind of frustration towards our team, but then also, frustration towards, our big league affiliate, the Tigers. So I think it's just, kind of recognizing that, yes, to your point, there are fans that, or followers that, just want to use Twitter as, kind of like a sounding board, and they just want to, type whatever they want and hit send. And, they don't really think that, those messages are actually going to someone, to an actual person. They're like, oh, we're just talking to this team. Well, no, it's, it's a team of people behind this account. So for, those kind of messages, we tend to just leave them. If they're, derogatory, or if they're, harmful in any way, we do hide them. But then for, constructive criticism and constructive questions, we do reach out. I'm constantly monitoring our comments and our mentions on Facebook and Twitter. And if there is, a legitimate, concern or, complaint that needs to be addressed, we'll address it publicly, and we'll say, hi, so-and-so, we'll be reaching out to you, personally. And then we do DM them and, try and work it out and try and, figure out the best course of action for it. But I think it's also just realizing that sometimes people are just, complaining to complain, and we just need to kind of take it for what it is.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, if there aren't any more questions, Amanda, there was some pretty exciting news with the walleye this week. Do you want to give a little update on that?
Yeah, so on Tuesday, I believe it was, we announced our walleye season schedule. So yeah, we're starting November 6th, which is awesome. We actually counted how many days it would have been since we last had walleye fans, and that's 615 days. So our last home game with fans was March 1st, 2020, because our game about 2 weeks later was the one against Cincinnati where we didn't have any fans. So from March 1st, 2020 to opening night this year, November 6th, it will have been 615 days since we had fans. Not that we're counting that either, but it was finally exciting to post, hey, we actually have a schedule and things are happening. And, we're already talking about, different ways to announce player signings this summer. So it's finally nice to get back in the swing of things with that too. Our schedule announcement, I don't know if anyone saw it, but we did what we called a schedule release show on Facebook, where we went live on Facebook and we invited a handful of kind of local celebrities to announce our schedule. So each month we had a different individual announce our schedule. So November, we had the Walleye GM, Neil Newcomb. December, we had the chief of police, George Kral. We had actually Mayor Wade Kapsakavich dressed in like full hockey gear announcing our schedule. We picked a walleye fan to announce a month. A former walleye player, Kyle Bonus, announced a month. So it was just something different rather than just, putting out a press release and tweeting out a graphic that says, hey, look at our schedule. We wanted to do something a little bit bigger. We kind of modeled it off of how NFL teams announce their schedule, which is topical because they all did that last night. And some NFL teams like really make it into like a big production. And we kind of wanted to do something along those lines because it's been so long since we've had a schedule that we wanted to really, make it special and make it stand out from years past. And it's actually something I wanted to bring up real quick is the platform that we used for this broadcast, which you can watch on Facebook still. It just stays on as a normal video. It's called StreamYard, and it's free. And it's one of the best kind of platforms that I've ever used. It allows you to connect directly to your either Facebook or YouTube accounts, and it allows you to go live but you're able to have multiple people on the screen. You're able to toggle between people talking and graphics and video and screen share. And it looks super nice. It looks super professional, and you don't need any sort of camera equipment. You do it all on your computer, and it creates these wonderful videos that are then, Facebook Live or YouTube Live. So I highly suggest that. Another team in the ECHL, the Maine Mariners, told us about it because they would do like weekly live Facebook interviews with their head coach. And so we looked into it, and we've used it a handful of times for various announcements. And it's one of the easiest platforms I've ever used, and we think it looks great.
That's awesome. How often are you, conversing with other teams, social media people, and talking about strategy?
Yeah, so for the ECHL on the hockey side, about once a month, we actually have like a marketing roundtable, they call it. So we all get on like a Zoom call, and it's the marketing or the social contacts for each team. And usually there's an agenda where the kind of the digital content person for the entire league kind of leads it. But it's also just us bouncing ideas off each other. It was so important during 2020 when, none of us were playing and we were all just kind of clamoring for some sort of content and engagement. And it was, asking, Indy, hey, what are you guys doing for engagement? And, just giving each other ideas and kind of all working together. So I'd say about once a month on average for hockey. And then baseball, I would say maybe 3 to 4 times a year. They get us all together, at least the teams in our division. And I have made contacts with, a handful of the teams that we do play more often, just to kind of bounce ideas off each other. And one of my favorite things to do on our team accounts is kind of interact with other teams in our league and in our division. So kind of having that, relationship, like we always talk about the Walleye, Fort Wayne Comets relationship. Obviously on the ice, it's such a big rivalry, but then also having our social media accounts kind of going back and forth with each other too. I think fans enjoy seeing that because it kind of gives it like a human aspect. And, we're not just, a hockey team, like there are human beings that are behind these accounts.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the things I wanted to talk about was the kind of the Fort Wayne Comments social page. When we played them in the playoffs, you guys started going back at each other and it was almost like social media chirping.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
And I think minor leagues really allow for that, because we're trying to have fun and we're trying to provide our fans with a great experience. And that's not just, in game when they walk into our venues, it's also on social media. So I think it's fun to go back and forth with them or any team in, a reasonable, way. That's not, stepping the line, but I do think it's something that's needed and it's something that fans really, can get behind.
Well, awesome. Well, if there's no more questions from the crowd, we have a couple more announcements to pass along, and then we can wrap it up. For upcoming programs for AAF, we have Lunch and Learn, Agile Creative, which is a best-selling author, speaker, podcast host, and entrepreneur. Greg Kilstrom will speak on Agile Creative. And then next month's Coffee with Creatives will be Creative Directions with Valerie Thompson, and more details to come on that. You can check out our promotions on our website at aaftoledo.org. And you can find all of our events on social media as well. So moving back to our closing, I'm going to take a page out of Brad Rieger's book. And Amanda, what would your walk-up song be if you were going to the plate at Fifth Third Field?
So that's a good question. 2 years ago, we actually had a staff softball game. This was back in 2019 after our season ended, and we split up into the whole front office. We were Team Muddy versus Team Spike. And it was a really cool experience getting to play like on the field. But my walk-up song was a Post Malone oldie, White Iverson, because I really do like Post Malone. So that was my
So-
walk-up song. So probably be either that or something country, because I do love country music.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I'd have to say mine would be AC/DC Thunderstruck without a doubt. That song just gets you going.
Mine would be Fat Bottom Girls by Queen.
All right. Well, to wrap it up, Amanda, if anybody's looking to, boost their social media game, what would be some of the advice, or you've already given out some resources through Sprout and StreamYard. What would be some advice you would pass along to people?
Yeah, a couple points. I definitely think social media is always changing. The platforms are constantly, changing. So I think just staying up to date with what's going on, staying up with, how, like, for instance, Twitter this past week, they announced that you can now post photos that are not necessarily 16:9. They can be more vertical and they'll show up in full in your news feed. So I think testing that out and seeing how that works, just keeping up with how they're changing. And then also recognizing, I think one of the biggest things that I've had to kind of work through since I've been here is realizing that every social media platform is different and they can't all do the same thing, and they can't be everything. So realizing that what you post on Facebook might not work for Twitter and that might not work for Instagram. So I think just making sure your content is optimized for each platform is so important. And then also staying interesting, not just post to post. So that's one of the mantras that I go by is don't just post to, check something off the list and be like, okay, I tweeted today. Make sure that it's actually something good and something that your fans want to see, because the minute that you post something that they might not be into, they might tune you out. And that's the worst possible thing that can happen with your followers, is if, they hit that unfollow button, because they might never come back. So just make sure that what you're doing is something that you as a consumer would, what's going to make you scroll and then stop scrolling. So just making sure that it's interesting, good content. And then also finally, just coming up with a goal for social media. Like at the end of the day, what do you want your social media platforms to accomplish? Do you want them to boost your brand awareness? Do you want to use them to, sell tickets or promote an event? What do you want your social platforms to accomplish? And then everything that you do from there on out should be, in line with accomplishing those goals. And there's a ton of blogs out there too. I know Sprout has a bunch. Facebook actually has a bunch that just talks about best practices. Even things as simple as, the sizes of images to share on the different platforms to make your feeds look as pretty as possible. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of information out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Amanda.
Thank you.
We have Toledo has one of the best social media pages in the league, both Mud Hens and Walleye.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us today. And I hope all of you found some nugget of gold within this, and check back on our website for more events like these. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, guys.